All right, so integers. When we're talking about integers, we're talking about the idea of whole numbers. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and their direct opposites. So it's a set of all positive and negative whole number values. There's no decimals, there's no fractions in there, it's just whole number values. Okay? So it's the set of all positive and negative whole numbers. And it includes 0 as part of that set. Now I can't say that 0 is a part of a positive set. It's not a part of a negative set. 0 is its own type of value. So now in blue, in light blue, or whatever color blue you've got, I'm going to go ahead and put the examples of what a representation of a set of whole or integers looks like. Again, if you don't have the colors, but your table mates do, and they're kind enough to let you borrow, by all means, go ahead, as long as you can do so quietly. You can use color pencils, you can use pens, it does not matter. Shh. I did say quietly. So, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then notice on both ends I've got that dot, dot, dot. Okay, that dot, dot, dot means that it's going to continue going on forever in an infinite amount. Okay, but you have to have them on both ends because now that we're talking about negatives, you do have a negative infinity just like you have a positive infinity. If we were to look at it graphically, like on a number line, so I'm back to my, what you would put as your pencil now, or your black pen. I've got my number line. Smack dab in the center of my number line is always going to be my 0. And then on the right side for my number line is where I have my positive numbers. So that means we've got that positive 1. Now I could write a little +1 there. It's perfectly fine if you want to. You don't have to. Naturally, if we don't have it written, we should know that it is a positive value. And I'm just going to keep filling in my number line. It's up to +7. The arrow indicates that it does continue going on. So we know there's a +8, +9. It keeps going and going and going. On the left side of the 0, that's where we have our negatives. So I'm going to fill that in with a pink or a red. Pink or red, depending on which color you've got. Again, guys, at that bar table, it's fine if you're borrowing from each other, but do so quietly. So we've got -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, and -7. It keeps going on forever in the negative direction. Having a number line set up is helpful when you have to worry about ordering numbers from least to greatest. You guys have been ordering numbers since you were, kindergarten, first grade. And you've been dealing with positive numbers since kindergarten or first grade. Negative numbers was introduced to you last year. But when ordering a negative number, it's the basic opposite or direct opposite to what you would do for positive numbers. So I know a +2 is less than a +7, but when I'm dealing with the negatives, a -2 is actually greater than a -7. They have an opposite effect on each other. What you would normally do to order your positives is the opposite for how you would order your negatives. So let's write something down. For negatives, and again, this is for negatives only, the larger your base number is, So when I'm talking about a -2, 2 would be that base number. The larger that base number is, the smaller the negative value is. So as your base number gets bigger, the negative value is worth a smaller amount. It gets further and further and further away from 0. And as always, we know positives are always larger than negatives. That's an easy thing. So I'll even write down the example I had before. A -2 is greater than a -7. All right, so ordering, putting these in order from least to greatest. Again, if you have a number line drawn, that makes it easier, kind of helps you see, okay, least to greatest is from left to right, greatest to least is from right to left, okay? So if I'm ordering integers and I've got a number line to look at, it makes it a little bit easier. If I don't have a number line to look at, then I just have to remember the way that I would normally order my positives is the direct opposite for my negative. Okay, hence the reason negatives are opposites of positives. So for these cases, we're going to go ahead and order them from least to greatest. Smallest value to our largest value. So if I've got the set -2, +7, +3, and -5. Right off the bat, I know that when I'm looking at these numbers, if I'm starting with my smallest numbers, what type of numbers should I be starting with, positive or negative? EJ?
Negative.
Negative. I should be starting with my negative values first. Okay, so here are my only negatives. I've got a -2 and a -5. Which one of those numbers is the smallest, -2 or -5? Braxton. -5, thank you. -5 is the smaller of those two numbers because, again, it's further away from 0. Right, here's where -2 is. Here's where -5 is. -5 is further away from the 0 mark. But if we didn't have this number line up here, we could focus on the fact that 5 is a larger base, which makes it a smaller negative value. So we're going to first write that -5. I can cross it off. It's always a good idea that when you're ordering numbers, cross them off as you are finished with it. So I'm going to cross off that -5. Then I'm going to write my -2 and cross that off. I have no more negatives. I don't have a 0 either. So I'm now just left with my positives. And positive numbers you can order easily. Which one's smaller, guys? A 7 or a 3? A 3. So I'm going to cross off the 3, and then I end with the 7. And there is my order from least to greatest. -5, -2, +3, +7. Let's have you guys try one on your own. Got -1, 0, -4, 3, -2, 5, and 1. -1, 0, -4, +3, -2, +5, +1. We're going to put that in order from least to greatest, your smallest value to your largest value. Go ahead and do that one on your own. All right, let's go ahead and put it in order. Who can raise their hand and tell me what it is they got? Let me see here. Let me see, number 2. Javen? Very good. All right, so starting with our smallest number, remember our negative values are always going to be the smallest of the values. So -4, it's the largest of the negative bases, so that makes it the smallest of the values. Then we've got a -2, and then -1. -1 is the closest to our 0 in this group. Notice we do have a 0 now. I'm putting it in blue. It's not going to be pink because it's not negative. It's not going to be green because it's not positive. It's its own type of value. Okay? Then I go ahead and order my positives. I've got a +1, a +3, and then a +5 as my largest number. So there it is in order from least to greatest. Okay? I'm now going to go ahead and I'm going to flip the page over because I'm going to talk about some vocabulary for integers. For you, if you want to write on the back of your sheet, if you want to put page 2 on the back, that's fine. Some people have noticed that their stuff has bled through the paper. I personally don't like putting it directly on the back because I tend to bleed through too. So you're more than welcome to either put it on the back or go to the next page. But page 2 is what we're going to right now. All right, on page 2, we're going to talk about some vocabulary, some terminology that lets us know that we're talking about a negative or a positive. So let's start with some of those negative terms. So some words, some phrases that mean negative. So if I say that something is below sea level or below 0, below means a negative value. It is a negative integer. When we go to the bank and we make a withdrawal, a withdrawal is a negative transaction. It means you're taking money out of your account. A negative transaction is occurring. If you're on a plane and they tell you that you are about to descend, that means that you are now going down in distance from the air. Okay, you are now decreasing and getting closer to the ground. That's called descending. So it's like falling. So we'll put fall in parentheses. So planes that are coming down onto the ground, they're approaching the ground, they are descending. Decrease. Decrease is not just a subtraction terminology, it is also a negative integer. Less. When you drop, okay, when the stock market drops, something that my family, my husband and my dad constantly are focusing on is the stock market. Did it rise? Did it drop? Okay, and then another one, a loss. How many of y'all play football? Okay, so you got a loss of yardage, you got a gain of yardage. Okay, those are positive and negative values. It's integers happening right there in the game. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go to our direct opposites, our positive terms. All right, guys, what's the opposite of below? Above. There we go. So above. Remember, negative and positive are opposites, so let's go ahead and do the opposite of these terms. Anybody know what the opposite of a withdrawal is? A deposit. Very good. The opposite of a withdrawal is a deposit. When you deposit money into the bank, it means you're putting money in. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. The opposite of descend is to what? Ascend. Very good. Real easy. What's the opposite of decrease, guys? Increase. I'm going to have to separate that table soon. What's the opposite of less? More. Opposite of drop? Rise. And then the opposite of a loss is a gain. Okay, and in case you forgot what ascend means, it means that it's going up, right?
Don't go yet.
I'm not. It'll stay here. All right, so what I want you guys to do right now, I'm going to write down a couple of scenarios, and you're going to tell me, is that a positive value or a negative value? Some of these are obviously already in this terminology, should be easy for you to grasp. Some of them might not be. Okay, if I say you're going to gain 6 pounds, is that a positive 6 or a negative 6 is what you'll put down here. Ooh, on paper. We'll go over it in just a second. Okay, a loss of 10 yards. We've got 1,000 meters above sea level. If you owe somebody $50, we'll say 17 degrees below zero. So off to the side, you're going to go ahead and write down what kind of value, what kind of integer is that going to be, positive or negative integers. Gain of 6 pounds, is that positive or negative 6? Positive. Very good. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a plus 6 right here. That plus sign is indicating it's a positive. What about a loss of 10 yards? Negative. Negative 10. 1,000 meters above sea level. Positive. So positive 1,000. If you owe $50. Negative. Nobody wants to owe money. You don't want to owe money. That's negative. Okay, and then 17 below zero, negative. Remember that keyword below, negative 17 degrees. All right. The last thing that we're going to talk about is absolute value. So for absolute value, that's distance. Absolute value is talking about distance that a number is from 0 when you're talking about it on the number line. And distance, guys, distance is always positive. Distance is always going to be positive. So distance a number is from 0. And it's always positive. So that means if distance is always positive, then absolute value of a number is always going to be a positive. So if you think about it, like when I'm driving to work, I'm going to drive and I'm going to have to get on 85 and I'm going to drive north. So I'm driving along a couple of miles and then all of a sudden it dawns on me, hey, I forgot to bring my laptop. So now I got to turn back around and drive south. Does that mean that my car's odometer is not going to calculate and it's going to go backwards now?
No.
No. Just because I changed directions, just because I was going north and now I'm going south, the odometer doesn't care. I'm still traveling distance. And it doesn't care if I'm going in reverse either. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and pull like a Fast and Furious move and I'm just going to drive backwards in reverse instead. It's still going to count on my odometer. That's warning number 2 on that table. It does not matter which direction that you are driving or which direction you are traveling. Distance is always going to be a positive value. It's always going to keep calculating. So for absolute value is always going to give you a positive number. Now, there are cases in which absolute value is used, but you get a negative answer. That's when you've got something outside of the absolute value marks. So let's go ahead and take a look. Absolute value is written by these little bars. These little bars around the number indicate absolute value. So like I said before, it doesn't matter whether it's a positive number inside of it or a negative number inside of it. They're both going to give me a positive answer, and I'll show you why in just a moment. The absolute value of a positive 4 is 4, and the absolute value of a negative 4 is still 4. Because if you're looking at a number line, 4 is just 4 spots away from 0, and negative 4 is also only 4 spots away from 0. Let me show you that real quick. So go ahead and turn back to your page 1 and go to the number line. Turn back to page 1 and look at your number line. If we're looking at 4, and I go ahead and I just start counting from 4, I'm going to go to the 0 mark. Every jump counts as 1 tally mark. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. So the positive 4 is just 4 jumps away. Guys, hush your mouths. Positive 4 is just 4 marks or 4 jumps away. It's a distance of 4 from 0. Same thing as that negative 4. I count. That's 1 jump, 2 jumps, 3 jumps, and 4 jumps. So it does not matter whether I'm talking about a positive 4 or negative 4. They both are a distance of 4 from 0. So that means that the absolute value of both of them is a positive 4. This also means that these values are called 0 pairs. They are called 0 pairs because they're an equal distance from 0, so that if I were to combine them together, they would offset each other and there wouldn't be a number to exist. So going back to here, to our absolute values. What is the absolute value of negative 30? EJ? 30. Now, if I have a problem like the following, a negative 3, absolute value of negative 3, and I'm going to then subtract a 5, this is a little bit different. The first thing that we would have to do here is we would have to find the absolute value of negative 3, which EJ already told us. He said it's going to be 3. Absolute value of a negative 3 is going to be a positive 3. But now I still have this minus 5 that's outside of the absolute value. So now I have to do 3 minus 5. What do you think? Huh? Negative 2. Very good. 3 minus 5 is now going to get you down to the negatives. Negative 2 would be the final, negative 2 would be the final answer. Let's take a look at one more example, and then I'll have you go on to your assignment. So we have a negative and then an absolute value of negative 15. So again, you have to do the absolute value first. You've got to do this first because it's almost like it's parentheses. Remember that order of operations? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Right? Parentheses has to be done first. The absolute value is kind of like a set of parentheses. Whatever's inside, that has to be performed first. So we're going to do the absolute value of that negative 15, which is going to be a positive 15. But then you've got that negative sign that's on the outside. So what does that make this? Negative 15. So you have to be aware of what's going on inside the absolute value and what's going on outside of it. Are there any questions? Someone said yes? No? Okay. What you have today, and you've got 20 minutes to be able to do this in class. Everybody last period finished. It's 15 questions. It's real fast. It's things like, hey, tell me what kind of integer is this? Is it a positive 12 or a negative 12? That's what you're going to be working on. It is due before you leave my classroom today.